Part 18. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 171. Fu Xuanyi was completely satisfied. He kissed the person in his arms several times and asked, "Are you hungry?" Wei Yuxian felt her stomach, and then realized that it was already empty, and whispered, "Hungry." Fu Xuanyi asked thoughtfully, "Do you want to eat in the room?" Wei Yuxian nodded and said, She is very weak now and has no strength at all. If she wants to go down to eat, Fu Xuanyi must carry her down. She doesn't have the shamelessness to ask this man to carry her down again. Therefore, it is better to eat in the room and avoid embarrassment. Outside, you will inevitably meet servants and old ladies, and you will be embarrassed when the time comes. Fu Xuanyi pinched her little cheek, stretched out his big hand, took the mobile phone from the bedside table, and sent a message to Aunt Fu. Not long after, Aunt Fu came to the room pushing a trolley. With a smile on her lips, she put the trolley beside the bed, said "Mrs. Xian, please use it slowly," and left the room. During this process, Wei Yuxian stayed in Fu Xuanyi's arms. After seeing the smile in Aunt Fu's eyes, she couldn't help but bury her head in Fu Xuanyi's arms and chose to be an ostrich. And silently thinking in her heart, "She can't see me, she can't see me, she can't see me." Covering one's ears and stealing the bell, that's what it is. Fu Xuanyi was so cute by the person in his arms. After Aunt Fu went out, he raised the person's head and said, "Okay." Wei Yuxian glanced at the door of the room and breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that the door was tightly closed and that there were indeed only two people in the room, herself and Fu Xuanyi. She complained a little, "Aunt Fu has seen it?" Fu Xuanyi raised his eyebrows and asked, "So what if I saw it?" Wei Yuxian looked at this extremely thick-skinned man and said, "I'm not as thick-skinned as you." Fu Xuanyi curled up his lips and gave another beautiful smile. Wei Yuxian was almost made to lose her temper by him. What should I do if I fall in love with such a thick-skinned man? Besides continuing to like her, what else can I do? She sighed inwardly and said, "I'm going to eat, I'm so hungry." It means, let Fu Xuanyi let her go and let her eat by herself. Fu Xuanyi didn't let her go. He stretched out his long hand and got the small table on the cart. After standing on the bed, he placed the food on it and then fed her himself. Wei Yuxian had already enjoyed such treatment at noon today, and now, she didn't want to enjoy such treatment anymore. The situation at noon today was special. She didn't dare to resist because she was in the wrong, but now. She looked at Fu Xuanyi and said, "I want to eat it myself." The smile on Fu Xuanyi's lips remained unchanged and he said, "Be good and be obedient." Wei Yuxian curled her lips and tried, "I want to eat by myself. I have hands and feet, so I can eat by myself." Fu Xuanyi put the rice directly to her mouth and said, "Open your mouth." The tone was so doting, yet so irresistible. Helpless, Wei Yuxian could only open her mouth and was forced to accept the man's feeding. She eats slowly and carefully so she can digest it better. Fu Xuanyi was also very patient, feeding the person in his arms one bite at a time, and he felt so satisfied. Half an hour later, Wei Yuxian finally had enough to eat and regained a lot of strength, and said, "I want to take a shower." Fu Xuanyi put away the bowls and chopsticks and said, "Wait a minute, I just finished eating." Wei Yuxian felt uncomfortable all over her body now, because she could feel it. After this afternoon, Fu Xuanyi simply cleaned her, then put on a bathrobe and took her back. I don't know what the situation was like at that time. Did anyone see her being carried back by Fu Xuanyi? If anyone saw her, that's too embarrassing. How can she study in the company in the future? It happened that she couldn't take a shower right now, so she took advantage of this little time to ask, "When you brought me back this afternoon, were you seen by anyone?" Fu Xuanyi nodded and said, "Yes." Wei Yuxian immediately became nervous, with a hint of panic in her eyes, and asked, "Are there many people there?" "Who are there?" Fu Xuanyi said, "Not many, just 3. Hearing this, Wei Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief. There were only 3, not too many. Then she asked, "Who is it? Do I know him?" She thought it was an employee of the company who saw her and said the following sentence. Fu Xuanyi listed the 3 people, father, mother, and Aunt Fu. Wei Yuxian first said. Followed by, "What? What did you say?" She looked at Fu Xuanyi with such eyes, full of shock. Fu Xuanyi very kindly repeated what he just said, father, mother, Aunt Fu. Wei Yuxian already wanted to faint on the spot. She never thought that these 3 people would be the old man, the old lady and Aunt Fu. She thought she was an employee of the company. If they were employees of the company, it would be better. She didn't know those people, and it was unlikely that she would meet them again in the company. But now, Fu Xuanyi told her that these 3 people were the old man, the old lady and Aunt Fu. This is the person she sees every day. She took a deep breath, exhaled it slowly, swallowed her saliva, and asked, "Did the master and the old lady say something?" Fu Xuanyi pinched her little cheek again and said, "Let me be careful and don't torment you too hard." Wei Yuxian looked at the man with a look of despair. When the old lady said this, didn't she know what was going on? Oh my God! How could such a terrible thing happen to her? But she was also happy. Fortunately, she fainted at that time, otherwise, she would have died even more. Now, since everything has happened, and there are not too many embarrassing things that happened to her in front of the old lady, she can only pretend that nothing happened. Don't they say that as long as you are not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed? There is a certain truth in saying this. Wei Yuxian sighed, rested in Fu Xuanyi's arms for a while, and then went into the bathroom to take a shower. After taking a shower, she began to feel sleepy again. She had spent too much energy this afternoon and had to make up for it. This night, Wei Yuxian slept very peacefully, because she was so tired that she fell into a much deeper sleep. The next morning, after getting up and washing up, she left food rations for the 2 babies, kissed the 2 babies several times on their faces, and then got into Fu Xuanyi's car. Just looking at the scenery outside the window, she suddenly realized that this was a strange road. She turned around and asked the man next to her, "Did you change your route to school today?" Fu Xuanyi tapped his fingers on the steering wheel a few times and said, "No, I'll take you to do something first." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 172. Wei Yuxian's mind was full of doubts. What should I do now? If I don't go to school, I will be late. Fu Xuanyi gave her a reassuring look and said, "I'll give you a half-day leave." Wei Yuxian pursed her lips and said, "I only go to school for a few days, and I ask for leave every day." All in all, she only had 5 classes in total this semester, which was really pitiful. Guai is so smart, missing a few classes is nothing. Wei Yuxian, this is not a question of smartness or not, but a question of attitude. What if the teacher thinks I am an arrogant person? Forget it, I'd better take less leave in the future. I understand, Fu Xuanyi said, as long as you don't provoke me. Wei Yuxian turned her head to look at the man, then turned her head back silently, saying in her heart, "I am the one who provoked you, it is obviously you who thinks about those things every day. Not ashamed either." She yawned. She was obviously not sleepy, but she still tended to yawn in the morning. Maybe this was the norm for early 8 people. She didn't know where Fu Xuanyi was going to take her, and wanted to ask him, but thinking that he might not tell her and that he would know where he was going soon, she didn't ask. The car has become quieter, but the atmosphere is still good and not as stiff as it was a year ago. Maybe this is the power of emotion. About 20 minutes passed. Fu Xuanyi finally drove the car to the place. Wei Yuxian looked at the store in front of her. It was a mobile phone store. She asked, "Do you want to change my mobile phone? My mobile phone is still very good, there is no need to change it." Fu Xuanyi said no, got out of the car, came to the passenger side, and opened the door for her. Wei Yuxian got out of the car and asked, "What are you doing?" Later, Fu Xuanyi took her hand and arrived at the real destination. When Wei Yuxian saw the words written on the building in front of her, she turned to look at the man next to her in disbelief, with a look of astonishment on her face. She couldn't even speak for the time being. It turns out that Fu Xuanyi just saw a parking space in front of the mobile phone store and drove there. His real target was the Civil Affairs Bureau diagonally opposite the mobile phone store. Wei Yuxian admitted that when she saw these 3 words, her brain couldn't function. How could she have imagined that a man would actually bring her to this place, and even ask for leave to bring her here? Today is a working day, and now it is working time. The staff of the Civil Affairs Bureau have already gone to work. Wei Yuxian took a deep breath to calm down the shock in her heart. She opened her mouth several times before asking, "Are you serious?" Fu Xuanyi looked serious and his tone could not be more sincere, saying, "Of course I am serious." "What, you don't want to do it?" Wei Yuxian didn't know how to answer this question. If she said she wasn't willing, of course she was willing. She wanted to be with Fu Xuanyi. If she was willing, she felt that now was not the time. She was not ready yet and had never thought of marrying this man so soon. She still felt that the distance between them was too far and she was not worthy of Fu Xuanyi. So, she didn't know how to answer this question. Fu Xuanyi narrowed his eyes and asked, "Have you forgotten what I said yesterday?" Wei Yuxian thought about what she had said yesterday. She just loved him and would never distrust him again. She shook her head and said calmly, "No." Fu Xuanyi held her hand, looked down into her eyes, and said, "Guai said yesterday that he loves me very much. I also said that I will only love Guai in this life." Wei Yuxian nodded, a little embarrassed to hear this man say such words. After all, this man doesn't seem like someone who would say such a thing. He used to be so aloof, so taciturn and sullen, and he never seemed like someone who could talk about love. But the fact is that this man not only knows how to talk about love, but he also knows how to talk about love very well. He can also talk about love without hesitation. In the past 2 days, she had deeply realized this man's ability to talk about love. Fu Xuanyi continued, "Yesterday, Guai didn't believe me. In order to make Guai feel at ease, I made this decision. After getting married, he is a married husband. This person is his family's darling, and he also gives his family's darling the greatest sense of security." Wei Yuxian felt extremely warm in her heart and said, "I understand. I now know what kind of person you are. If you want to get the certificate, I haven't thought about it clearly yet." Fu Xuanyi raised his hand and looked at the watch on his wrist, and said, "It's 8:03 now, 5 minutes, is it enough to consider?" Wei Yuxian. This man seemed to be joking with her. After 5 minutes, what could be thought of? She said, "I think there is still a big gap between us. You are so good, but I am so, anyway, 5 minutes is not enough." "My dear, those are not things you should consider," Fu Xuanyi said, 5 minutes is not enough. Is 10 minutes enough? Wei Yuxian, what's the difference? 5 minutes or 10 minutes, can such a major life event be considered clearly in this small amount of time? She was very hesitant in her heart and said, "You also know that the Fu family has such a good background, but I have nothing. I am not worthy of you." Fu Xuanyi, "Then tell me, who can be worthy of me?" Wei Yuxian thought about the people she knew, but she didn't expect anyone who could be worthy of Fu Xuanyi. For such a proud man, it seemed that no one could be worthy of him. She shook her head and said, I can't think of it, but at least he must be a very good person, preferably with a background similar to yours. When she said this, her heart was blocked, as if she was pushing this man away with her own hands. Fu Xuanyi chuckled disdainfully, disagreeing with her words and said, I said you deserve it, so you deserve it. Wei Yuxian was silent. She lowered her head and twisted her fingers together, thinking seriously. In fact, she was very happy about what Fu Xuanyi said. After all, the person who said such words was the person she loved. They are connected and like each other. Is there anything better than this? Fu Xuanyi pulled the person into the Civil Affairs Bureau and said, Go in and think. Wei Yuxian could only follow his footsteps, walked in, and sat down on a chair. When the staff saw someone coming in, they all looked over. When they saw a pair of extremely good-looking people, their eyes flashed with surprise. The staff at the marriage certificate window asked with a smile, Handsome girl, do you want to apply for a marriage certificate? You are the first couple today. Fu Xuanyi looked at the staff and said, She still needs to think about it. The staff obviously did not recognize Fu Xuanyi, but thought that the appearance of the newlyweds was too incredible, and said, What are you hesitating about, beauty? Of course such a handsome husband should seize the opportunity. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 173. Wei Yuxian looked at the enthusiastic staff, smiled awkwardly, and said nothing. Fu Xuanyi sat next to her, held her soft little hand in his, and waited for her to think clearly. When the staff saw this, they stopped disturbing them and looked at them with onto smiles. Seeing how good-looking they were, a staff member secretly took out his phone and took a few photos. This staff member was just about to send a message to Moments to share about the handsome guys and beauties he saw. Suddenly, his phone was pressed by a colleague next to him. She looked at her colleague with a puzzled look on her face and asked, What's wrong? Why are you covering my phone? This is my baby, please don't cover it. The staff member looked at her precious mobile phone with a distressed expression, and then glared at her colleague, as if the colleague had done something heinous to her mobile phone. The colleague didn't care about her look now and said, Do you know who the person you photographed is? You dare to post it on WeChat Moments. I'm afraid you don't want to live long. The staff wiped their precious mobile phones and asked nonchalantly, Who is it? Which big shot? I opened my eyes today. As she said that, she laughed a few times, in a silly way, not caring at all. A colleague came close to her ear and said, The person you photographed is Master Xian. When the staff member heard the last two words, her hands shook and she almost dropped her little baby to the ground. Fortunately, she had a steady hand and held the phone firmly. She opened her eyes wide and looked at the person sitting on the chair over there. Then, with a face full of disbelief, she looked at the colleague next to her and asked, Who do you think this is? Who do you think this is? Someone please tell me this isn't true. Now, it was the turn of her colleague Lao Shen. She picked up the ceramic jar and calmly took a sip of the freshly brewed tea. She said calmly, I said, This is Master Xian. The staff has gone absolutely crazy. She quickly deleted the copy she had just edited, opened the photo album on her phone, and deleted the photos she had just taken. She even deleted her seniority, not even leaving any information behind. Please. That's Master Xian. Except for Master Xian, no one else in Kyoto dares to call him Master Xian. She is a little person, but she dare not offend Master Xian. I originally thought that I would be so lucky today to take a photo of a handsome man and a beautiful woman. Who would have thought that it would be Mr. Xian who brought someone to collect the certificate? But she was lucky today, just in time for Fu Xuanyi to come to collect the certificate. Not long after, news spread throughout the Civil Affairs Bureau. The people sitting in the hall were Master Xian and his little wife. Everyone was extremely curious and wanted to see what kind of person Mr. Xian, the little wife of a big shot, was like. But I was afraid that I might offend Fu Xuanyi somewhere, so I could only look at it cautiously, not daring to look openly. Here, Fu Xuanyi glanced at the watch on his wrist from time to time, and spent the rest of the time focusing on Wei Yuxian. Finally, 10 minutes passed. He was a little tormented by waiting and asked, "Have you thought clearly?" Wei Yuxian took out her phone and took a look at it, only to realize that 10 minutes had passed. These 10 minutes were torture for Fu Xuanyi, but fleeting for Wei Yuxian. Of course she didn't think clearly in such a short time. She looked at the man in front of her, her lips moved, but she said nothing. Fu Xuanyi asked, "Hey, dear, don't you want to get the certificate from me?" Wei Yuxian lowered her head guiltily. "At least, not now." Fu Xuanyi narrowed his eyes, with a flash of danger in his eyes, and asked, "What you said you love me, was all a lie?" Wei Yuxian didn't dare to raise her head and whispered, "No, it's all true." "Then why don't you marry me?" His question was too fatal. Wei Yuxian took a deep breath and said, "The reason, I just mentioned it." Fu Xuanyi sneered, "Is that considered a reason?" "Darling," I said, "those are not problems, you don't need to think about those." Wei Yuxian also knew that she didn't have to think about those things and could only do what she should do with the people she liked. But she couldn't help but think about it. Fu Xuanyi seduced her in her ear, "After we get married, you will tie me up, don't you want to?" Wei Yuxian slowly raised her head and looked at the man beside her, and suddenly a strong voice appeared in her heart, "Marry him. Get the certificate from him. Make him yours. After receiving the marriage certificate, Fu Xuanyi is yours alone, and no one can compete with you anymore." This impulse has been rushing to my head. Fu Xuanyi continued, "My dear, don't you want Shishi and Zizi to have a perfect family?" The impulse in Wei Yuxian's heart was even more rampant, impacting her sanity. She thinks. Of course she does. This is what she has always wanted. So, why does she still think so much? How many lovers wanted to be together but couldn't? Now that she had the chance to be with Fu Xuanyi, why did she have to think about it so much? She and Fu Xuanyi are in love, and they have 2 children. Even if they don't get married now, they will most likely get married in the future. So, what does it matter if it's earlier or later? She knew that the man's actions today were to give her a sense of security and to tell her clearly that his love would only be given to her. Then she couldn't let this man down. The relationship between 2 people cannot rely on the efforts of one person alone. It must be maintained by 2 people together in order to go further. Whatever the background, go to hell. She never thought that anyone could be worthy of Fu Xuanyi. Since she doesn't deserve it, she doesn't need to think about it anymore. After thinking for a while, the courage in Wei Yuxian's heart reached its peak. She felt braver than ever before. She looked at Fu Xuanyi. With the encouragement of the man, her eyes became firmer. All I heard was that she said softly, "Axuan, let's get married." Fu Xuanyi raised a slight smile on his lips and said okay. Then, he picked up people and went to go through the formalities. He was fully prepared today and brought all the materials needed for the wedding. In this way, Wei Yuxian followed Fu Xuanyi ignorantly. She did whatever the staff asked her to do, and she was extremely obedient. The Civil Affairs Bureau has been working for so long, except for them, there is no one else. Now that the staff knows their identities, their work efficiency is extremely fast. After a while, their marriage certificate was released. Until she got 2 red notebooks and sat in the car, Wei Yuxian was still a little confused. She opened the red notebook in disbelief and looked at the photo of her and Fu Xuanyi inside. The corners of her mouth couldn't help but curl up. All this is too fantasy. She and Fu Xuanyi actually got married. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 174. Fu Xuanyi had a panoramic view of her movements, and when he saw the smile on her lips, he couldn't help but curl up his lips and smile. He started the car and drove towards home. Wei Yuxian looked at the scenery outside the window and found that Fu Xuanyi was taking the same path just now, and asked, "Do you want to go home?" From this moment on, she could say the word home without any burden. Fu Xuanyi said his tone rose, and he was in a good mood. Wei Yuxian opened her mouth, thinking that she had already asked for half a day's leave, so she didn't say anything. "Anyway, I have already asked for leave. I can go wherever I want next, whether I go home or follow him to the company." Wei Yuxian still felt that it was a bit fantasy and unreal, otherwise, why would she be holding two red notebooks in her hands? "When I just paid, I paid 9.9 yuan. She opened the red book again and looked at the photo of herself and Fu Xuanyi inside, and then looked at their names, as if confirming it again, before closing it. Then, she pinched her arm again and found that it hurt, and then she accepted the fact. The fact that she and Fu Xuanyi really got married. Oh! This is so great. From now on, she and Fu Xuanyi will be a real family, and she and the old lady will also be a real family. And Shishi and Zizi no longer have to worry about this or that. Fu Xuanyi saw the smile on her face getting brighter and asked, "So happy? I had to think about who it was just now for a long time. If I hadn't forced myself, I wouldn't have been willing to go in." Wei Yuxian was a little shy, turned to look at the man, and said in a low voice, like a shy little daughter-in-law. Fu Xuanyi was in a good mood and said, "I should have brought you here a long time ago." He should have brought her here on the day his darling came of age, so that he wouldn't have to think about her day and night, and have long nights and dreams. Now, his obedience has become his legitimate Mrs. Fu, and no one can take her away from her. When Wei Yuxian heard the man's words, she became even more shy and lowered her head, not looking at the man. At the same time, she felt warm in her heart because she was cared about by this man and was in his heart. The two of them didn't say a word, and an unknown atmosphere surrounded the car, which was so beautiful. The home she wants is slowly taking shape. There's nothing better than this, right? As the engine stopped, Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi also returned to Fu Mansion and got out of the car. Wei Yuxian asked, "Aren't you going to work this morning too? Isn't it bad? Yesterday afternoon plus this morning, Fu Xuanyi didn't go to work for the whole day. Is this really no problem? The Fu group is so big and has to deal with a lot of things. Many decisions need to be finalized by him. If he doesn't leave for a day, will he have to work overtime at night?" Fu Xuanyi took her tender little hand and said, "It's okay, let's go in." Wei Yuxian entered the house with him, changed her shoes, and then walked into the living room when she saw two pairs of shining eyes. Who are they if they are not Fu's father and Fu's mother? Two elderly people, each holding a baby in their hands, were looking at them with smiles. The two old men have now guessed what the surprise Fu Xuanyi mentioned yesterday was. This morning, Yuxian didn't go to class, and this guy didn't go to work. They went out together and came back together. What else could they do? What else can I do besides getting a marriage certificate? Mother Fu's eyes were almost blinded by laughter. She shook the little one in her arms and asked, "Have you gone to get the certificate?" The one with the raised tone is so happy. Even Father Fu, who never liked to smile, looked at them with a kind smile on his face. Wei Yuxian felt even more embarrassed. Then she remembered that they had not asked the master and the old lady for their opinions when they received the certificate this time. However, judging from the old lady's previous attitude towards him and the last conversation, he urged himself and Fu Xuanyi to see that the two elders should also agree to their marriage certificate. Looking at the mood of the two elders at the moment, it goes without saying that they are very happy. Therefore, they received the blessing of the elders when they received the marriage certificate. She blushed and followed Fu Xuanyi like a shy little daughter-in-law. When Fu's mother saw her like this, the smile on her face became even brighter. She seemed so rare to people. It seemed that Yuxian was speechless and shy. Fu Xuanyi's face looked normal, but if you look carefully, you can still see a hint of happiness on his face. He led the person to sit down on the sofa, which was right next to the second elder and much closer to the second elder. After sitting down, Fu Xuanyi said to his mother and answered her mother's question just now. The second elder got the affirmative answer and was so happy that he didn't know what to say and just kept laughing. After laughing for a while, Fu's mother said, "Okay. Great. This is really great. I have been looking forward to the day for a long time, and finally I have waited for this day. Ah Xian, you are so impressive." Fu's mother praised Fu Xuanyi. When she looked at Wei Yuxian, her eyes were full of love. Her favorite Yuxian finally became a legitimate family member with them. Fu Xuanyi just smiled at his mother's compliment and turned to look at the shy person next to him. The little guy is still very shy. He keeps his head down and doesn't know if his neck is tired. He stretched out his hand to lift her head so that her head was coming back, and said, "Don't be tired." Faced with the man's constant concern, Wei Yuxian said it was impossible not to be moved, and it felt so sweet in her heart. After returning home for so long and sitting with the two elders for a while, Wei Yuxian gradually adapted to the occasion, raised her head, met the old lady's gaze, and gave her a shy smile. Then, she took the initiative to take out the little red notebook from her bag, handed it to the two elders, and said, "Master, Madam, take a look." The voice was a little soft, with a hint of shyness. Fu's mother looked at her like a treasure, said good several times, and took the red notebook. When I saw the 3 words on the red book of the marriage certificate, I couldn't help but touch those words on it. She handed a book to Father Fu, and they both opened it to look at it. Inside, there was a photo of Fu Xuanyi and Wei Yuxian. Wei Yuxian put on some light makeup to look more photogenic. Fu Xuanyi has always been handsome. When the two of them are next to each other, they create a beautiful scene. The second elder looked at the photos of the two of them and nodded repeatedly, very satisfied. Fu's mother not only read it herself, but also put the marriage certificate in front of the little guy in her arms and said, "Look quickly, it's your parents' marriage certificate." Seeing this, Fu's father followed his wife's example and put the marriage certificate in front of Shishi and said, "Check it out too." The two little guys saw something placed in front of them. Although they couldn't understand it, they stretched out their hands to reach for it, which made the two elders very happy. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 175. Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi couldn't help laughing when they saw the performance of the two babies. Wei Yuxian's eyes were very gentle, and she felt the strong atmosphere of home, and her heart felt sweet and warm. After coming to Fu's house, she often had such wonderful feelings. Make her feel that she is really a part of the family. But now, she is indeed a part of this family. They are a real family. After the second elder read the marriage certificates for the two babies, Fu's mother took both marriage certificates in her hands and said, "I'll keep them for you, so you can rest assured." Wei Yuxian didn't know what the old lady meant, so she smiled shyly and nodded without any objection. Fu Xuanyi had no objection even more. He left it to his mother to keep, so that his obedient child would not want to see this thing again. Very good, anyway, he will never have the idea of divorce in this life, and his dear, he is not allowed to have it either. The old lady waved and called Aunt Fu over in the living room and said, "Put it in my little box." Aunt Fu also had a smile on her face, not a polite smile, but a sincere smile, sincerely happy that Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi were getting married. After taking the 2 notebooks, she went upstairs and put them in the old lady's small box. Inside were all the old lady's important things. After Fu's mother told Aunt Fu, she began to fiddle with a jade bracelet on her wrist. It looked a little old, but the quality was still very good. It seemed that it had been carefully maintained. She asked Wei Yuxian to take out her hand, and the latter obediently did so. Then, a jade bracelet appeared on her wrist. She quickly said, "Old madam, no need." As she said that, she was about to take off the bracelet from her wrist. Fu's mother held her hand down and prevented her from taking it off, saying, "Yuxian, this is the bracelet passed down from the ancestors of the Fu family. It was passed down from Xian's grandmother mine, now, I pass it on to you and you keep it. Also, don't call me master or MRS from now on. Now that we are a family, it's time for you to change your name." Father Fu also said, "It's time to change your tune." The second elder didn't like that title very much. It was too unfamiliar, so he asked his parents to come and kiss him. The second elder has been waiting for Wei Yuxian to change her story for a long time. She had not received the certificate before and knew that she was thin-skinned, so he could not let her change her story. Now that they have received their marriage certificate and they are truly a family, they can now bring up the matter of changing their confession. The second elder looked at Wei Yuxian with an expectant look on his face, as if there was light in his eyes. Wei Yuxian looked at the eyes of the 2 elders, 2 red clouds quickly floated on her face, and she was thinking about changing her words in her heart. Indeed, it is no longer appropriate for her to call her Lao Lao madam and she needs to change her name. However, she looked at the 2 elders and couldn't scream for a while. She still had to make some preparations and muster up the courage. The second elder did not urge her to scream immediately, but looked at her lovingly, as if he were his own child. Fu Xuanyi had been holding her hand. At this moment, he put her hand in his and played with it, saying softly, "Good boy, just scream." Fu Xuanyi's words and Fu Xuanyi's actions gave Wei Yuxian great courage. She took a deep breath, looked at the 2 elders, and opened her mouth. After brewing for a while, she finally called out, "Mom, Dad." The voice was neither too quiet nor too loud, and there was no excessive hesitation. After hearing this, the second elder smiled from ear to ear and said hey happily. Fu's mother even held her other hand and said, "Good boy, such a good boy." Wei Yuxian seemed to have run out of courage. She lowered her head with a shy smile and leaned towards Fu Xuanyi. Fu's mother teased her and said, "Why are you still so shy? In our family, you can't be so shy. We are all a family, so there is nothing to be shy about." Wei Yuxian said slowly raised her head, looked at the old lady, and called out again, "Mom." "Hey," Fu's mother responded and gave her an approving look, "That's how it should be. Our Yuxian family is great." Fu's mother praised Wei Yuxian as much as she praised the baby. Wei Yuxian also enjoyed the treatment of a baby. She had a sweet smile and was very beautiful. Fu's mother praised her again, "Our family, Yuxian, looks so pretty when she smiles. She should smile more at ordinary times. She looks so pretty when she smiles." And the same goes for Xian. He doesn't usually have such a stern face as his boss. He's just like your dad. If what should I do if Shishi and Zhizi also imitate you? Fu Xuanyi and Fu's father were regarded as negative examples and did not dare to say anything. Fu Xuanyi could only say to express that he understood. After Fu's mother finished speaking, She lowered her head to look at little Zhizi in her arms and said, Zhizi, you must never imitate your father and grandfather in the future. Do you know that you should smile more? We know how beautiful it is when you smile. The little guy didn't know what his grandma was talking about, but when he saw the smile on his grandma's face, he couldn't help but burst out laughing. As soon as she smiled, it affected Father Fu's hand, and the little guy also laughed. The two little guys laughed happily. The family spent the morning happily at home. At noon, after lunch, Wei Yuxian had a full class in the afternoon, but it was lunch break now and the school was also lunch break, so she took a nap at home. Fu Xuanyi couldn't take a nap at home. He had to rush to the company and handle the work early so that he wouldn't have to work overtime for so long at night. During this nap, Wei Yuxian slept with her two babies. She held both babies in her arms, smelling their fragrant milky scent, and slept very peacefully. After taking a nap and getting up, it was time for her to go to school. The second elder personally walked her to the door, really treating her like a child. The old lady also warned, don't be tired, do you know that your body is the most important thing? Wei Yuxian wore a fisherman's hat on her head, which made her look full of energy. She said, I understand, Mom. You and Dad can go in quickly. After changing her words, it became smoother for her to call these two names. From now on, she will only call them more smoothly. The relationship between their family will also get better and better. Fu's mother said, you get in the car first. We'll go in after we watch you get in the car. Helpless, Wei Yuxian could only get in the car, lower the window, and wave to the elders. The second elder also waved to her, with a little worry in his eyes, worried that she would not be well fed or clothed at school. But it was clear that Wei Yuxian would be back in the evening, but they were still worried. After all, being at school is not as good as being at home. Parents at home can't help but worry when their children go out. It's just that the second elder's situation is more serious. Nowadays, Yuxian and the two babies are the golden ones in the family, and nothing can happen to them. Here, in the car, Wei Yuxian closed the window, but the smile on her lips did not go away. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 176. The person driving the car was still Lu Changxiao, and the people in the car were still the 4 bodyguards. When Akong and Ali saw Wei Yuxian being so happy, the former asked, Madam, has something happy happened to you? Wei Yuxian nodded twice and said Akong spent a few days with Wei Yuxian and knew that she was a talkative person, so he asked, can you tell me what happy things happened? Wei Yuxian was hesitant whether to tell her about getting the certificate with Fu Xuanyi. If you don't say it now, you will have to say it later. Maybe soon, everyone around Fu Xuanyi will know about them getting the certificate. So, what she says now is no problem. Moreover, this is a fact, not a lie. Thinking like this, Wei Yuxian looked at the two of them and said, I went to get a marriage certificate today. Her voice was not loud, but to the ears of Akong and Ali, it was shocking news. What? What did the lady say? Akong and Ali looked at each other in pairs, and apart from seeing shock in each other's eyes, there was nothing else. This is really shocking news. Ali took a deep breath and asked, are you married to Master Xian? Wei Yuxian's lips widened a little wider and she said, yes. Besides Fu Xuanyi, who else could she get the certificate from? If she had obtained the certificate from someone else, Fu Xuanyi would have caught her on the spot and taught her a lesson. As for how education is done, that cannot be said. After receiving the answer from the rightful owner, Akong Ali, Lu Cheng, and Lu Chengxiao were stunned for a while, and then there was a burst of applause. Wei Yuxian looked over after listening to the commotion and found that it was Lu Cheng who was applauding. This young man in his early 20s had a decent appearance and was a bit handsome. At this moment, with a youthful smile on his face, he said, "Congratulations to Madam, Madam. Congratulations to Master Xian too. I wish Madam and Master Xian a happy marriage for 100 years. This young man's mind was quick and his words were sweet, which made Wei Yuxian laugh. Thank you. Wei Yuxian covered her mouth and smiled. Akong and Ali also reacted and clapped together, saying, "Congratulations, Madam. I wish Madam and Master Xian a happy marriage for 100 years. Lu Chengxiao, who was driving, couldn't applaud and could only wish him well. Then I also wish Madam and Master Xian a happy marriage." Wei Yuxian smiled and said, "Thank you everyone. I also hope you can find the right person for you soon." The car drove all the way to the school and stopped in a parking space in front of a certain teaching building. Several people got out of the car, which attracted the attention of the people around them. Many people looked over. When they saw it was Wei Yuxian, some couldn't help but look envious. They were envious of Wei Yuxian's good fortune, which happened to be that she met Fu Xuanyi, became his fiancé, and gave birth to 2 heirs. She is simply a winner in life. In the days to come, you no longer have to worry. Of course, there are some people who are jealous of Wei Yuxian and wonder why Fu Xuanyi is attracted to her instead of Fu Xuanyi. Then he couldn't help but compare himself with Wei Yuxian, feeling that he was even more powerful than Wei Yuxian. In this Kyoto, many people who know about Master Xian want to marry Master Xian. Not to mention ordinary people like them, even President Qin of the Qin group wants to marry Master Xian. But who would have thought that the person Xian Ye fell in love with was Wei Yuxian? Wei Yuxian ignored everyone's gaze. Under the gaze of everyone, she walked into the teaching building without any stage fright, came to the elevator, and waited for the elevator with a group of classmates. She is not qualified to care about what others think of her, and other people's thoughts and opinions are also irrelevant to her. Too many people care too much about other people's opinions, so they will live a very tiring life. Sometimes, life can be easier if you don't care about other people's opinions. Life is your own. How you want to live it depends on you. As long as you live comfortably, you can live however you want. When she went to the classroom, Wei Yuxian chose a seat in the middle and sat down. Because the seats at the back were already occupied, they had no choice but to take a seat. In this position, Lu Chengxiao and others are also very satisfied. After all, they cannot force the students behind them to get up. They are good students. Not long after I sat down, the teacher entered the classroom and worked on the multimedia computer on the podium for a while, and then it was time for class. The teacher began to follow the PPT lecture, and Wei Yuxian's expression became focused and distracted. A class lasts 80 minutes, plus 10 minutes for a break, a total of 90 minutes. Some people are on pins and needles, while others feel that time passes too fast. This is the case with all aspects of life. After class, Wei Yuxian took Lu Chengxiao and others out of the classroom and took a look at the class schedule. The next class was physical education. Physical education is an elective course. Wei Yuxian originally chose badminton because she was not good at anything else but badminton. Needless to say, Lu Chengxiao and the other 2 also chose badminton classes, so Lu Chengxiao drove to the badminton hall where the teacher was teaching. The school is very big, and the parking spaces on campus are also very large, which is very convenient. Wei Yuxian is taking badminton class for the first time this semester, and she doesn't know who her classmates are. Because of the elective courses, their major was taken together with other majors, and she didn't recognize any of them except the classmates in this class. The students came to the badminton hall one after another, and there were several classes in total. Wei Yuxian took pictures of sports to find the teacher, and went to where the teacher was. The teacher was a middle-aged uncle, and it was not yet class time. he was chatting with a few classmates with whom he was close and playing with his mobile phone. The atmosphere was quite good. Wei Yuxian found a chair and sat down, without interacting with other students. Mainly, I'm not familiar with it either. As time passed, more and more people poured into the badminton hall, and class time was approaching. Wei Yuxian took a quick glance and found that she didn't recognize many people. Soon, everyone came and it was time for class. The physical education teacher first called the names and confirmed that everyone was here before starting the lecture. The teacher gave lectures and demonstrated at the same time, telling the students some basic knowledge of badminton. The lecture lasted about 10 minutes, and the rest of the time was for the students to practice badminton on their own. There are many people in the badminton hall, but the venue is also large and has complete facilities. At least it can give every student a place to play. Wei Yuxian went to get a pair of badminton rackets and a new badminton, and asked Akong and Ali, how about the three of us taking turns playing? Naturally, Akong and Ali had no objections. The latter said, okay, madam can do whatever she wants. I'll practice with madam first. I'm pretty good at badminton. Good. Wei Yuxian was playing badminton with Ali seriously and didn't notice that someone on the other side of the gym was looking at her with an unkind look. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 177. On the other side of the gym, there are several girls sitting on chairs. They are not practicing, but taking a break. There are several students like this in every class who sit on chairs and chat when they are not practicing. When the teacher sees it, he won't say anything, as long as they can pass the assessment, it's just that they usually give less. Some students look down upon those points and think that as long as they can pass, they don't care about the score. And these girls are just like that. The girl sitting in the middle is the most beautifully dressed. It is not difficult to tell that she is the leader of this small group. The girl had her hair loose and looked to be in her early 20s. She had fair skin and looked breakable. She was a delicate lady. At this moment, she was looking at Wei Yuxian, who was playing basketball over there with unkind eyes. She held a lollipop in her mouth and asked with disdain in her eyes, "Is that Wei Yuxian?" A girl on her left immediately said, "Yes, Sister Mew, she is Wei Yuxian, look at the photo, it's her." The girl also took out her mobile phone, and there was a photo of Wei Yuxian on it. The girl named Sister Mew glanced at the photo on her phone and then looked at Wei Yuxian over there. After meeting her face, the disgust on her face became even more obvious. She took out the lollipop from her mouth, threw it into the hand of the girl on the right, and said, "You little bitch." The girl's name is Qin Zimu. If you look closely, you can see that Qin from the Qin group is somewhat similar to Qin Junling. Yes, she is Qin Junling's biological sister. The two sisters have a very good relationship, and Qin Junling dotes on this sister very much. Because Qin Zimu is the youngest child of the Qin family, he can speak in front of his elders and is loved by his family. She and Wei Yuxian had different majors, but because they also took badminton classes, they met Wei Yuxian here. Several girls responded to Qin Zimu, "Yes, she looks like a little bitch to me. Such a person looks innocent, but deep down, she's very sexy. Maybe Master Xian was deceived by her appearance. I don't think she's a good person, she's a naturally charming person." Several girls scolded each other, but they did not dare to speak loudly for fear of being heard by other students. If other students heard this and told Wei Yuxian, they would be doomed. They scolded each other, but they were still wary of Wei Yuxian's identity. After all, she was Master Xian's fiancée. Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi just received their certificates this morning, and they did not announce the news to the outside world, so people outside still think that Wei Yuxian is just Fu Xuanyi's fiancée. Several girls usually follow Qin Zimu and fawn over her. They smile at whoever Qin Zimu likes, and they bully and step on whomever Qin Zimu hates. But this time, the person is a bit tricky. She is Master Xian's fiancée, and her status is too high. But in order to cater to Qin Zimu, they had to step on Wei Yuxian. Qin Zimu felt very happy when he heard the words of the girls around him. He still looked at Wei Yuxian with cold and disgusting eyes and said, "Find an opportunity to teach her a lesson." Her eyes were like those of a poisonous snake. She is so good looking, but her words are so vicious. When several girls heard her words, they couldn't help but look at each other and became cautious. They didn't dare to teach Wei Yuxian a lesson. After all, Wei Yuxian was also Master Xian's fiancée. How could they have the courage? Although the Qin family's status in Kyoto is not small, compared with Master Xian, it is still far behind. They can still tell which one is light and which is serious. But at this moment, they couldn't just say no, because Qin Zimu wouldn't let them go. Several girls looked at each other, no one dared to speak. But they have to talk, because if they don't talk, this sister will be unhappy. This sister is unhappy, and they are the ones who suffer. They followed Qin Zimu mainly because they wanted to use Qin Zimu's identity to bring more benefits to themselves. But they also need to be cautious when staying around Qin Zimu, because they cannot offend this sister. There are advantages and disadvantages, but for them, the advantages are more. Finally, the girl on Qin Zimu's left spoke, "Sister Mu, you have to think carefully. Wei Yuxian is Master Xian's fiancée after all. You must not act impulsively. She has been following Qin Zimu the longest, and she is also the second child in this small group. She usually talks to Qin Zimu the most. Qin Zimu also trusts her more and leaves many things to her. She does a good job and does her job beautifully, and Qin Zimu also likes to have her by his side." When Qin Zimu thought of Fu Xuanyi and his sister, his hatred for Wei Yuxian deepened, and he said, "Who knows whether Mr. Xian really likes her or pretends to like her? Isn't it just because she gave birth to a child for Mr. Location? Maybe Master Xian only gave her that position because she could have children. In fact, Master Xian doesn't love her at all. Her sister has liked Master Xian for so many years, but she has not received any response from Master Xian. Why should this bitch do it? Why did she snatch Master Xian away as soon as she appeared?" Qin Zimu became very angry when she thought that her sister had worked so hard and excelled for Master Xian, but in the end she didn't even get a look from Master Xian. Mr. Xian is really blind. He doesn't want her sister, a great beauty, but insists on finding a little bitch like Wei Yuxian. Master Xian can only belong to her sister. Wei Yuxian, a little bitch, can go wherever she likes. Dare to compete with her sister for a man, she is so tired of living. The girl didn't know what to say, because in her opinion, if Master Xian didn't like Wei Yuxian, there was no need to give her the status of his fiancée. Anyway, with the status of the Fu family, if the Fu family wanted those two children, Wei Yuxian had no strength to resist. But Master Xian just gave it to him, so Master Xian most likely liked Wei Yuxian. Girls can think about this clearly, and Qin Zimu can naturally think about it clearly, but she chooses to regard this idea as false. Except for her sister, Master Xian cannot be taken away by anyone. Qin Junling loves Qin Zimu very much, which can be said to be doting, so Qin Zimu also likes his sister very much. Every time she saw her sister feeling sad for Fu Xuanyi, her heart would clench. If possible, she wished she could kidnap Fu Xuanyi in person and marry her sister on the spot. But no, Fu Xuanyi's identity did not allow her to do this. Not to mention her, not even her sister dared to say a harsh word to Master Xian. The girl could only sigh in her heart and asked, "Sister Mu, what do you want to do? How do you teach her a lesson?" After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 178. Qin Zimu said, "It's the old method, Aren't you the most familiar with it? The girl nodded and said, I understand, Sister Mew, but now is not the time. We have to wait for the right time. They also knew Wei Yuxian well, and knew that the 4 people around her had been following her to protect her. As for the identities of these 4 people and whether they were real bodyguards, they had no idea. If Wei Yuxian didn't have these 4 people by her side, it would be much easier for them to move around. They could just put people in sacks and do whatever they wanted. But now that's no longer possible, they still have to be wary of the people around Wei Yuxian. Qin Zimu also knew that this matter could not be urgent, so he had to keep it secret. It was best not to let anyone know about it, so that even Fu Xuanyi could not find out. This is a bit more difficult and requires more preparation. But she can afford to wait. What she lacks most now is time. Qin Zimu was extremely excited at the thought of teaching Wei Yuxian a lesson. He wished he could tie her to the toilet right now and give her a severe lesson. She clenched her fists and gritted her molars tightly. Leave this matter to you, don't let me down. After success, I will give you 100,000 yuan, and the rest of you will also receive 10,000 yuan. When the girls heard this, they were very excited and immediately responded happily. Especially the girl on the left, she was laughing so hard that she couldn't even see her eyes. Anyway, as long as this is done secretly and Master Xian doesn't know about it, nothing will happen and you can still get 100,000 yuan. Why not do it? Several girls fell into the eyes of money, and they thought that since they had done such things so many times, nothing would go wrong. They did not think about what would be waiting for them if they were discovered. They followed Qin Zimu just for money. As long as they had money, everything would be easy. And Qin Zimu was also happy to give them money. This small amount of money meant to her, the Qin family had such a big property, and her family and sister loved her so much, her monthly living expenses were a large sum of money, and she couldn't even spend it all. Not to mention, she still owns 3% of Qin's shares, and her annual dividends are too large to count. As long as the problem can be solved with money, it is not a problem. Wei Yuxian, just wait and see if you can smile so happily again. Qin Zimu's eyes when looking at Wei Yuxian were still so vicious. Here, Wei Yuxian had no idea that she was being watched. At this moment, she was happily playing badminton with Akong. Ali came off the court and rested on the sidelines, leaving Akong and Wei Yuxian to play badminton. Akong's skills were not as good as Ali's, so he was beaten to a pulp by Wei Yuxian. He begged Wei Yuxian again and again, Madam, can you be merciful? Let me win a few goals. Wei Yuxian laughed twice and said, Okay, then I'll tell you, pay attention, the ball is coming. Akong stared closely at the ball flying over. This ball was relatively gentle, and even the parabola was very beautiful. When the ball was approaching in front of him, Akong swatted it hard, it missed the ball. The ball fell to the ground. Akong made a sad face and said while picking up the ball, Madam, you are so awesome. Wei Yuxian put the net side of the racket into her other hand, bounced it a few times, and said, My serve has been very slow. Why can't you catch it, Kong? She doesn't know many ball games, but she is relatively good at badminton. Because she was exposed to it in school when she was young, and she has some talent, she is naturally better at badminton. Akong straightened up, with a badminton lying on his hand, he sighed and said, Oh, it's all because Madam is so powerful. Ali, why don't you teach me how to play? Ali over there tilted his head and said, Okay, you can do it as I say. Later, Akong fought with Wei Yuxian again. This time with Ali guiding him, Akong finally lost less miserably. After playing for almost an hour, Wei Yuxian was sweating and tired. She handed the racket to Ali who was resting over there and asked her to play with Akong while she sat next to him and rested. Lu Changxiao and Lu Chang fought together. If they got tired from playing, they would take a break and regain their strength before continuing. After Wei Yuxian sat down, she took out a towel from her bag, which she brought specially for physical education class. She wiped the sweat from her face, neck, and arms, opened her mouth slightly, and gasped. After she was out of breath, she took out the thermos cup and took a sip of the warm water inside. The doctor said that you should not drink ice water after exercise. It is best to drink warm water, which is good for your health. Even though drinking ice water can instantly relieve the heat, it is too unfriendly to the stomach, and Wei Yuxian doesn't want to ruin her body. After that, Wei Yuxian didn't play anymore. She just rested on the sidelines and watched a Kong and a Li fight. It was almost time for get out of class to end. When the heat in her body subsided and she adjusted her condition, there were still 5 minutes until get out of class ended. The teacher gathered everyone to where they were and called their names. After finding no one sneaking around, he let them go. Everyone cheered and left the arena in 2s and 3s. Wei Yuxian just walked out, got in the car, and waited for Lu Changxiao to drive into the alley outside the school gate. A few minutes later, Lu Changxiao drove the car to where Wei Yuxian wanted to go. The latter almost immediately got out of the car and walked to the car over there. She opened the door and got in the car by herself, with an unconscious smile on her face. "Actuan," she shouted. "Yes," Fu Xuanyi responded, looking at Wei Yuxian, his eyes full of tenderness and doting. "I'm home." Wei Yuxian smiled and said, "Yeah. Go home." The car started, merged into the endless traffic, and disappeared. Lu Chenxiao's car followed closely behind him, and together they drove into the Fu mansion. Wei Yuxian chatted with Fu Xuanyi all the way and told him what happened in class this afternoon. Fu Xuanyi listened patiently, without any sign of impatience. Back home, at dinner time, the two elders sat at the dinner table early, waiting for their return. Wei Yuxian had just finished washing her hands when she heard Fu's mother over there. "Yuxian, come here quickly and see which one you like." She looked over and saw the old lady waving to her, motioning for her to come over. She also saw Fu's mother holding something in her hand, but she didn't know what it was. Walking over, she sat down next to Fu's mother. When she poked her head around, she saw that the notebook in her hand was full of pictures of wedding dresses. "Wei Yuxian. So, what does mom want to do when she sees the wedding dress? Have a wedding?" Mother Fu put the book in front of her and said, "These are the wedding photos I sent over today. Which one looks better? What kind of photos do you want?" Wei Yuxian pursed her lips and said, "Mom, this shouldn't be urgent." "Mother Fu, how can we not be in a hurry? We have already received the certificate, so of course the wedding must be held as soon as possible." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 179. Wei Yuxian naturally knew that her mother wanted them to have a wedding as soon as possible, but now was really not the time. She still has to go to school now. Marriage is such a big deal and she can't just do it casually. She has only been in school for a few days. If she asks for leave to get married, it will be equivalent to not attending school. Fu Xuanyi's wedding was naturally planned beautifully, and the guests invited to the banquet were definitely ordinary people. It couldn't be held within a month or two, and after getting married, there was a honeymoon. Although she thought it was a waste of money, this man would never let go of such an opportunity. Therefore, it is still too early to talk about marriage now. She also knew why her mother was so anxious for them to hold a wedding. She mainly wanted to announce to the outside world that they were really together. She, Wei Yuxian, is no longer just Fu Xuanyi's fiancée, but his real wife. But now is really not the time. Neither she nor Fu Xuanyi are free, so how can they get married? She could only say, "Mom, why don't you ask Xian for his opinion?" She asked the question to Fu Xuanyi, who took it naturally and said, "Mom, I don't think now is the time." Wei Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that the man had the same thoughts as hers. At least, the two of them are on a united front, and she is not fighting alone. It feels so good to have teammates. The smile on Fu's mother's face immediately dropped, and she asked, "Why is it not the right time? I even found someone to calculate the days. At the beginning of next month, there will be a great day. From now to that day, half 1 month is enough time to prepare." Half a month. Wei Yuxian was scared to death by Fu's mother's words. She held the chopsticks in her hand and looked at Fu's mother blankly. Fu Xuanyi was very calm and said in a calm tone, "I want to give her the best. Mom, you don't need to worry about this. I have my own sense of proportion." Wei Yuxian came back to her senses and looked at Fu Xuanyi with eyes full of admiration. That little look seemed to be saying, "Yes, yes, yes, Fu Xuanyi is right. Mother Fu, you young people now, I really don't know what you are thinking. Forget it, I am an old man and I am too lazy to care about your business. As long as you hold the wedding before I am buried." Wei Yuxian was not happy to hear Fu's mother say such things, and it seemed as if she had only a few days to live. It had not been long since she felt the warmth of her home, and she didn't want anything unexpected to happen. She took the initiative to hold Fu's mother's hand and said, "Mom, you and Dad will live a long life. Not to mention watching us get married, even if Shishi and Zizi get married, you two elders can also see it. In the future, please don't say such words again." Xian and I felt uncomfortable after hearing this. Fu's mother looked at Wei Yuxian with joy and said, Okay, Mom will never say such things again in the future. She will definitely live a good life and watch us Shishi and Zizi get married." She didn't love Yuxian in vain, the child was filial. Fu's mother was becoming more and more satisfied and fond of Wei Yuxian. Wei Yuxian's little face revealed a beautiful smile, and she said sweetly, The wedding was finally over. Wei Yuxian couldn't help but feel a little grateful when she looked at Fu Xuanyi. This man still knows how to talk. If it were him, he would definitely not be able to talk to his mother. Wei Yuxian had dinner, took Shishi and Zizi out for a walk, and then took a shower and went to bed after returning. The next day, Thursday again, she only had one class in the morning, and then she could start enjoying the wonderful weekend. After school, Wei Yuxian took Luchan Xiao's car back home. It was just 10 o'clock, and there was still some time before lunch. She was sitting on the sofa, holding Shishi in one hand, chatting with her mother beside her. Zizi was held in Fu's mother's hand. The little one slept a little easier than her brother. Now that her brother was awake, she was sleeping soundly. Wei Yuxian chatted with Fu's mother for a while and felt a little bored, so her mind became active. Somehow, that man came to mind, her husband, the new, legal husband. It's almost lunchtime, and I don't know if Fu Xuanyi will eat on time. What if he forgets to eat when he gets busy? Wei Yuxian couldn't help but worry about the man, fearing that he would neglect to eat in order to work. How about, she makes a lunch herself and sends it to him? With this idea in mind, Wei Yuxian looked at the time and saw that it was only 10:30. If she went to get it now, it would be in time. Once it was done, it would be sent over immediately, and Fu Xuanyi could still have something hot to eat. Just do it, Wei Yuxian said to Fu's mother and ran into the kitchen. After arriving at Fu's house, she rarely entered the kitchen. Counting, she only went in twice, once to make small cakes and once during the New Year's Eve dinner. Now, it should be considered the third time. After not cooking for a long time, Wei Yuxian was afraid that her cooking skills would become rusty and the food she cooked would not be delicious. The dishes she can cook are not very high-end, just some home-cooked dishes that she was used to cooking when she was in the Wei family. As soon as she entered the kitchen, several chefs immediately spotted her and asked with a smile, "What do you want, madam?" When the host enters the kitchen, the first reaction of the chefs is that they are looking for something. Wei Yuxian said, "I came here to cook. What should I cook for lunch today?" When the chefs heard this, they immediately panicked, thinking that the food they cooked was not delicious, so the lady had to come to the kitchen to cook in person. "Madam, is there something wrong with the food we cooked recently? Tell us and we will change it immediately." Wei Yuxian knew as soon as she heard that they had misunderstood her, and said, "No, no, there is nothing wrong with the food you cooked. I just want to cook a meal for a Xian and send it to him. Don't worry." The chefs breathed a sigh of relief and said, "So that's the case. In that case, I'll send someone to help you." Wei Yuxian nodded and said, "Yes." In this way, Wei Yuxian started making lunch in the kitchen. She also made one for herself and took it to the company to eat with Fu Xuanyi. When I think about having lunch with Fu Xuanyi later, my mood gets better inexplicably. After lunch was ready, Wei Yuxian wasted no time and asked the driver to take her to the Fu group without stopping, just in time for lunch. Wei Yuxian always had a faint smile on her lips and held a large thermos bucket in her hand. Inside was her and Fu Xuanyi's lunch. I don't know if Xian will be surprised when he sees his arrival at this time. She found that she liked Fu Xuanyi more and more, and his figure would pop up in her mind from time to time. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 180. They say that when you like someone, you will think about them all the time. When I can't see him, I want to see him. When I see someone, I want to be close to her. Wei Yuxian didn't believe these words before, thinking it was nonsense, but now, she believes it. After personal experience, she believed this statement. Because now she is thinking about this man every day. Whenever she has free time, the figure of this man will definitely pop up in her mind. She will think about what this man is doing at the moment, whether he is in a meeting, reading a report, or looking at documents. Also, the different expressions on this man's face, when he is smiling, when he is tense, and when he is expressionless. It seems that every expression of him has a different charm. With a ding-dong sound, the elevator arrived at the floor where the president's office was located. Wei Yuxian walked out with her meal and walked straight to the familiar place. When I walked to the door, the office door was closed. I couldn't hear anything going on inside, and I didn't know if Fu Xuanyi was inside. Wei Yuxian raised her hand and knocked gently on the door. She heard a come in from inside, a familiar voice, and the smile on her lips became even more obvious. She opened the door and walked in. Walking in, the man was looking down at the documents without looking over. "Put it on the table," Fu Xuanyi said, still not raising his head. He thought it was Guan Jinyu who had brought food in, and was busy looking at the documents in his hand. Wei Yuxian was very obedient. She walked to the table, put down the rice, and sat down on the chair opposite. She put one hand on the table, propped up her chin, and watched the man handle his work. Fu Xuanyi is also so handsome when he is working, and his serious expression makes people want to focus on him. She wanted to see when this man would notice that she was here. Fu Xuanyi read the documents for a while, but didn't hear the door closing, and then he noticed something was wrong. Moreover, he seemed to smell a familiar milky scent. It was the scent of guai. He immediately looked up and saw that the person sitting in front of him was none other than Guan Jinyu. He was obviously his obedient one. The coldness on Fu Xuanyi's face immediately softened, and he asked, "Why are you here?" Wei Yuxian's eyes narrowed as she said, "I'll bring you some food." At this time, the knock on the door rang again. Fu Xuanyi said, "Come in," towards the door. The door opened, and this time it was Guan Jinyu who came in. He was still holding Fu Xuanyi's exclusive lunch in his hand. When he saw Wei Yuxian here, he was stunned for a moment. Then, with a smile on his face, he shouted, "Hello, madam." Wei Yuxian also greeted him, "Hello Assistant Guan Ti, is what you are holding in your hand Xian's lunch?" "Yes ma'am, this is Mr. Fu's lunch." "Did you buy lunch?" Guan Jinyu shook his head and said, "I'll go there later." "Wei Yuxian, farewell, you can take the food in your hand and eat it." "I brought lunch to Xian." Guan Jinyu looked at the table and saw a large thermos bucket. He nodded and said, "Okay, madam, I'll go down and eat." "Well, goodbye, Assistant Guan." Guan Jinyu quickly walked out of the office, leaving this place to the two of them. Wei Yuxian took out the food from the thermos bucket. There were 3 dishes, plus rice, but no soup. Time was running out and she had no time to make soup. Fu Xuanyi took a look and found that it was very different from the dishes cooked by the chefs, and asked, "Did you make it by yourself?" Wei Yuxian's eyes widened slightly, "How did you tell? Doesn't the food she cooks look delicious?" Only Fu Xuanyi could tell it at a glance. Fu Xuanyi smiled slightly, "I can tell." Wei Yuxian didn't want to hide anything from him, and said, "Eat, you should be hungry, try it and see if what I cook is delicious and how it compares with what the chef at home makes." But they are professionals, and I just know a little bit of home cooking. The chefs must have made it delicious. Fu Xuanyi has been accustomed to eating dishes prepared by chefs since he was a child. Fu Xuanyi picked up the chopsticks, picked up the dish in front of him, put it into his mouth, tasted it carefully, and after a while, said, "It's better than what the chef makes." Wei Yuxian was very happy when she heard this. Although she knew that Fu Xuanyi's words mostly meant to coax her, her mood somehow got better after hearing it. Maybe this is the joy of getting affirmation. She also picked up her chopsticks and started eating together, saying, "It's delicious. Eat more. Eat them all. Don't waste it." The man said in a deep voice, "As you command." Next, the two of them chatted for a while, chatting about work, then about study, and then about family matters. Last time I told Aunt Fu to develop the photos of the 2 little guys. Aunt Fu worked very quickly and finished it in less than 2 days. After Wei Yuxian read the photo album, she was very satisfied and felt that the decision she made was very correct. In the future, there will be more photos and albums, and their babies will have a perfect childhood. She said, "How about we take some time as a family to take some family photos?" Suddenly, an idea popped into her mind. When Fu Xuanyi heard this, he naturally agreed to her and said, "Okay, the day after tomorrow." Wei Yuxian smiled and said with a sweet smile on her face. After lunch, Wei Yuxian packed up the thermos bucket, and the two of them finished their lunch without a grain of rice left. After packing up, she wanted to go home, but the man held her back and refused to let her go, asking her to stay with him in the company. When Wei Yuxian saw the man's face, she couldn't help but feel soft and agreed, planning to spend the afternoon with the man in the company. She will also come to the company tomorrow because she wants to continue studying in the finance department. She benefited a lot from spending a few hours in the finance department last week. This time, she will stay for a day and will definitely learn more. After lunch, Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi went into a small room and slept for a while. When it was time to go to work, Wei Yuxian had not yet woken up. Fu Xuanyi kissed the person in his arms and got up to handle his work. Didn't disturb Wei Yuxian's rest. More than half an hour later, Wei Yuxian also woke up, but her head was still awake. She looked at the time and found that it was already work time. No wonder there was no man around her. She washed briefly and walked out. Just then, a secretary walked into the office. She called someone first and then got down to business. "Mr. Fu, Mr. Qin is in the lobby on the first floor. He wants to see you. President Qin, needless to say, Wei Yuxian also knows who this President Qin is. Who else could it be besides Qin Junling? Why did she come to Xian? Why does she come to see Xian every day?